So today I want to talk about difficulty in video games, specifically in regards to a game like Cuphead. Now, I liked the game quite a bit. I played it all the way through, and I actually liked the boss rush near the end. But I liked the first half of the game much more than the second half. So I started to think about why. Because I started to feel less and less accomplished the more bosses I beat. Where there should have been this feeling of achievement, finally overcoming the obstacle. Instead, I had this feeling of, it's about time. Now, the game is difficult and requires you to make some precise moves and quick reaction. You've got microseconds to survey the landscape and make a quick decision. And sometimes things don't go your way, but you've still got to power through. All stuff that I love. So I think my problems with the difficulty come from the fact that you really don't have to aim at the boss. All the bosses are usually huge, ginormous, screen-covering creatures. You just need to shoot in their general direction and you'll slowly tick away life. So this creates an interesting effect. One, you never really feel your misses. A lot of times in these types of games, you'll have that open opportunity for a good amount of damage, but you missed! And you really feel it, but you can't dwell on it for too long. You're still in the middle of a battle, so you just kind of have to recompose yourself and move on with it. I know there are the special moves in Cuphead, but those are just kind of like bonus damage. Most of the battle is still fought with just your regular gun. So secondly, because of this rapid fire with your gun and the slowly draining life of the boss, it makes the bosses a lot more like a countdown timer. So instead of this kind of like back and forth of attacks, you kind of get this feeling of, I just gotta stay alive for this amount of time. I just gotta outlast the boss, wait around long enough, and he's gonna run out of life. So a good analogy would be like a game of basketball where you play for 20 minutes and a game of basketball where the winner needs to score 20. In the timed game, it's a completely different dynamic. One team could build up a huge lead, and because of the time remaining, you know there's no chance to come back. One team could also hold out the ball and waste time, causing less excitement. But in the game to 20, you always have to score the last basket. Somebody is going to have to find a way to put the ball in the hole, or the game won't end. You can't be bailed out by time or by the opponent making a mistake, and it makes for a much more dramatic and achieving finish. I think the same example could be made about Smash Brothers, like a timed game versus a stock game. The strategies change and so does the gameplay style. So all of this leads to this mold-over knockout. So when the announcer in Cuphead goes, knockout! It should be like that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out moment where you dodged left, you dodged right, you barely escaped getting hit. Here's your opening, pew! And they go down. But with Cuphead, it's more of a, let me learn the early patterns well enough so I can get by them cleanly. Okay, now I'm in the second section. I know I'm going to screw this up a few times until I learn the patterns. Okay, now I've learned the patterns. I got to learn how to get through this cleanly. Okay, I made it to the final section of the boss. Now I've got to make it to this point without losing all my lives before. And then in the final section, I'll kind of sloppily get through it without actually having learned the patterns because I saved up enough hits from the previous sections. So in that last section, you're really not asked to become competent in it like you are in the previous parts. And while it's nice to not have to get good at the hardest part and just be allowed to move on, I feel like that's missing the point of being a difficult game. For example, I always felt like I was annoyed at the bosses. Here's usually how my reaction was at the end of a fight. Come on, how much more life does he have? He's gotta be dead soon. His life is so low, he's gotta be dead. Come on, where is it? Okay, knockout, finally, gosh. That took forever. And that's how I felt a majority of the second half of the game. This is not to say that the game isn't good or that you shouldn't play it, but it's an interesting byproduct that comes out of how games are designed now. So take a look at something like the original Mega Man games, which it's obvious that Cuphead takes influences from. The bosses in Mega Man were difficult, but the difficulty was also tied in the level. There's this kind of sweet, harmonious balance of struggling and trying to get through the level, and then getting to the boss maybe in a weakened state without enough lives, and then being in a situation of thinking to yourself, am I going to be able to make it this time? And it's this immediate analyzation of information. You've got to process things rather quickly and make adjustments on the fly. You've only got a small window to do all of this. And then there's this crippling feeling in the back of your mind that if you're unable to figure it out, you're going to have to do it all over again. So when I see something like Cuphead, it makes me feel like somebody said, "You remember Mega Man? Man, those boss battles were great. Screw the levels and screw having to do all of them all over again. Let's just make a game where you play the best parts, the boss battles." But then when you sit down and think about it, the boss battles really only last maybe 10 minutes. If you can just immediately start from the boss battles, there's really not much to the game. So then you really have to think about how to make these battles that can stand on their own, that are difficult but also engaging and contain variety, which if you play Cuphead, you'll notice that's exactly what's happening. Now again, this is not to say that it's a bad game or that it's poorly designed, but it's absolutely fascinating to me the design choices they made and how it affects how the game must be played. Take, for example, a game like Contra Shattered Soldier. It's set up in levels with a starting point and an ending point. There's usually some sort of mini-boss and some sort of ending boss. There's always like small little weak points and projectiles you have to shoot down. You've got to manage changing weapons. It's a little bit more slow-paced. The attacks are more telegraphed, so it feels a little bit less random. But then again, I never finished that game because it's so long. Not because the levels take forever, but because it takes forever to learn the levels. There's only like 7 stages, and if you know how to play them, you can beat the game in like an hour. But it just takes so much commitment to run through the level and die and die and die, inching your way to the end. Comparatively, Cuphead is low barrier to entry. Each battle only takes like 10 minutes at the most. And if you mess up, most times you just start back up at the boss again. And I guess that's kind of why I don't consider Cuphead a difficult game. Yes, it's not easy, and I actually love having to manage all these things all coming at you at the same time, but I don't remember it ever feeling as rewarding as a level from Shattered Soldier. But still, I don't know if that's the route to go either. I don't think you should make the player run through this gauntlet repeatedly just to lengthen out the game. And it's pretty obvious that Cuphead didn't want to do that, seeing as how they separated side-scrolling levels from boss fights. I don't want to sound like I'm completely negative about Cuphead. I think there are some really great moments. I actually really like the casino run at the end, where you're rolling the dice to land on tiles. I found it to be a perfect balance of skill and repetition. If you're really skilled enough, you can just roll the dice the way through. And none of the battle tiles are that difficult to where it's impossible. So there really are stakes to every fight and every roll. And I remember when I finally got past the level, I felt accomplished. And that was something that I felt was missing from a lot of the game. The boss fights are nice, they're grand, beautifully drawn and animated, but I felt like it lacked the build-up. There was no substance to make me invested, which made the payoff less rewarding as well. I started recording this video back in 2017, when I first finished the game. And now as I'm finally finishing it up, I realized that the Cuphead DLC is coming out soon. I don't expect there to be any changes to the Cuphead formula. I think it'll be largely the same. They're going to wow you with the visuals. They'll give you something pretty to look at. But after that, is there really a future to this series? Can you make a Cuphead 2 with the same concept? Just more pretty boss battles? Or maybe a different animation style? I guess for me, that's probably the most interesting thing about this game. So thanks for listening. If you have a different opinion, by all means, leave a comment. If you know of any other games that are similar, or do difficulty better, let me know. And we'll see you next time. Bye.